Courtney Olsen, welcome to the Free Trail Podcast. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me, Dylan.
It's not every day you get a certified world record holder here on the podcast. So, and for our listeners, this is our first time ever chatting, Courtney and I. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I'm grateful you would do it on quick turnaround, only a couple of days after what I'm assuming is the proudest sporting achievement of your life. We'll get to that in a second. Courtney, I start all these podcasts in the same place. That is just an introspective question to get to know you a little bit better. That opening question is just, what makes you, you? What are your unique strengths and weaknesses? How do they show up in your life?
What makes me me? Right off the bat, I want to say I'm kind of like a sarcastic, pessimistic, dry sense of humor, curmudgeonly kind of person.
Me too. All right. We're best friends already.
Wow. Nice. Yeah, I feel as if I'm a creative person. I love to read and learn about other people. I much prefer listening over talking. I would much rather learn all about you right now than to talk about myself. That's a little bit about me.
You know, that's funny. I was talking to our mutual friend, Devon Yanko, today, and she said that after she texted you after your world record performance and that you texted back something to the effect of, "Hey, how are you doing?" Totally taking the attention away from your massive accomplishment and therefore hoping to learn a little bit more about somebody else. So anyway, you are in the spotlight here today, whether you like it or not. And I'm excited to unpack everything. We're going to do a lot of like background foundation setting for the audience and for myself, just, you know, by virtue of the fact that you probably earned a lot of new fans last weekend. But before we get to it, I'd love to just start by just understanding when like you developed a relationship with this record. Like, had this been something that had been percolating in your brain for a little while? Did you have an understanding and appreciation of Ann Trason and her legacy, things like that? I'd love to understand where the seed was planted before we do the backstory.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for asking that. I feel like the last few years, because I've only really been dabbling in ultra running and racing the last few, because I was heavily focused on the marathon. And in the last few, I've been romanticizing the 50K road record to the 100K road record. So that would include the 50 mile right there in the middle. And for the longest time, it was the 50K. And I felt like I had it in me, but rare is the chance to explore it, except for like at World Champs. And then when Des got it, I was like, that's fucked. Like that's gone. And then the 100K I've been seeking, just at least mentally, for a long time, but the opportunities are rare as well. And the only time I can run that flat road distance is usually at the World Championships. And they're not always conducive to fast running, especially, well, Berlin was good and I got closer to believing that I could do it there. That was the last 100K World Champs. And then this year is going to be in India next month, and we can talk about it later, but I don't feel like it's conducive to running the times I want to run. So I wanted to put something ahead of it, which was this Tunnel Hill 50 mile. And I've been thinking about it more concretely, probably just the last half year, because Comrades gave me a sense of just empowerment and belief in myself. And so I feel like I was skirting around the paces needed in order to hit that record time. I just needed the right race and the right health and just everything to go my way in order for that record to be achieved. So long story short, I feel like I've been dreaming about it seriously since June, but playing with it in my mind for a few years.
What a perfect cliffhanger. Okay, we're going to come back and pick up there here in a little while. But before we do, obviously, we need to get a deeper understanding of who Courtney Olsen is. You live in Bellingham now. From what I understand, you grew up in Western Washington in the Bellingham area. So give us a sense of your upbringing, what your childhood looked like, your relationship with sport, things like that.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Bellingham, Washington, and I'm here now. And I moved away a few times, but kept coming back here. So obviously I love it. I lived in Portland for a year. I lived in Boulder for a few years. I miss those places, but this just is like the perfect balance of everything for trail and water sports, mountain sports. The hippie vibe that it once held was what I preferred to live in. Like Portland was a little too big, Boulder was a little too big for me, so Bellingham felt just right to live in continuously. And now it's very large. After COVID, it's grown exponentially, and it's a little stifling for me. So I'd prefer to leave now, I feel. But I grew up doing sports since I was very young, and it was just the whole myriad. Basketball was really important to me as I was young, and running started really early, probably elementary school and turkey trots and stuff like that. And I just kept going with it. It was the best way to make friends and keep relationships and just have fun. So I started very young, and it feels like I've been running forever, which I have, and most of us have, right? But I also consider myself kind of like a late developer, or a long, like it has taken me in my mind 37 years to get here. I feel like I've always been fairly good, decent, but never at that caliber that warranted support to make it feel like I could take the next step or hit other levels in the sport. So feels like I've been clawing my way through the sport since I was young. What other kind of things do you want to hear about?
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much. And you went to college in Bellingham, also running for Western Washington University. And I found like an obscure article that was written about you on the internet after you pushed Team USA to Team Gold at the World Championship in 2022. And in that article, it described something about how you encountered some personal challenges after university. And in an effort to make you relatable here, I would love to hear about that to the extent you're willing to share, because it sounds like you had a little bit of a moment of personal, challenge, adversity, and that running was something that helped you out of it at an important moment in your life.
Yeah, I feel like you might be referring to some of my openness I've shared about my depression. And so
the article was not specific. So it just used some quotes that said something to the effect of you dealt with some challenging issues after college and felt a little bit lost.
Mm-hmm. It was definitely, I feel as if I was depressive and am a depressive like my whole life. And I only identified with it like in my mid-20s right after college. And it was pretty severe and challenging, and I could hardly get out the door to run. But I was able to just get like a mile out the door and make that mile turn into 2, and then get 30 miles in a week, and then sign up for a marathon. So it built itself up, and I was able to run my first marathon in like 2014 and make it into the Boston that happened the year after the bombing. And all of that stuff kind of built itself into this way to help me through my depression at that time.
Well, thanks so much for sharing. Is there anything about that moment? I mean, thinking back to the couple of years after college for me, I mean, it is a moment in life where you're searching for purpose and direction and career without the structure of school, and especially like collegiate athletics in a lot of our cases too. Was there anything about that moment that you felt created the conditions for the adversity?
I'm not sure. I was so directionless, and like you, for those reasons that you said, and just not having the whole support system of college and the built-in friends and the teams and stuff. And then moving to Boulder and working a few jobs and just like overworking myself and having no direction. It was like, it's that pivotal moment in your mid-20s when you need to struggle a little bit and try to figure it out. But I was so directionless, and I still feel pretty directionless. I probably still feel exactly as I felt then. I just have a little bit more resiliency and like skill set to handle when that stuff kind of arises. Yeah.
I think a lot of us struggle with directionlessness, but I appreciate you sharing your story. I know one of the things that has at least provided some direction, or at least that from what I've heard through our mutual friends, is the Bellingham Distance Project. I think you were instrumental in forming and organizing that group. So tell me about the Bellingham Distance Project and what value it's brought in your life.
That's really sweet of you to know about it and to bring it up. I'm very proud of it. It is one of the things that actually were like the vehicles to help me through my depression, as well as creating that, because it was a space for post-collegiate athletes to gather when they felt directionless themselves, because essentially it was a group of people who were too good to stop running, but not good enough for sponsorships. And there were
That's
many.
An interesting way to put it.
Well, I don't know how to say it better, but that's how we see it. And so the club is about 10 years old now, and we started out as female only, and then now we've grown to include all. And it's about 10 years old, and it's a huge mix of people that focus on from the track all the way to ultras and UTMB level. So it's a huge mix of incredibly talented people, men and women, with a lot of specialties, and we don't have a singular coach or singular training plans. It's like clusters of who works best in each other's lives as working professionals. And I helped start it, and I'm the president of it currently, and we have a board, and they're some of my favorite people, and a lot of the people on the team are who I trained for and have been training with for the last 10 years.
Wow, so cool. So in that decade-long journey, are there any important lessons in community building or in leadership and founding and stewarding an organization that are salient for you?
I would request aid in that. I would pose that question to people who are doing it well out there. I would love collaboration and insight onto how to better serve groups like this. I always feel like I'm a step behind and just trying to keep my head above water to support these people. And I just hope they know how hard I work to try to make it all work. And honestly, it's like herding cats. It's really difficult, and it's adults. It's all adults. So it's funny. It never ceases. Like whether it's a youth program or adults, it's always so hard to get everyone on the same page. So it sounds kind of negative, but it's playful.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure the group chats and the group messages were blowing up this past weekend when President Courtney Olsen broke the world record. So
yeah, they were very supportive.
Shout out to the BDP. Very, very cool. Thanks for sharing that. So you describe yourself as literally a piece of shit artist. Those are your words, not mine. And I found your blog online, which I love, by the way. It's incredible. So you mentioned in our original opening question that you fancy yourself as a creative person. Tell me about those outlets, because I also talked to Devon Yanko about this. She contributed something, but we can get to that in a second. First, tell me where your passion for art and for writing came from.
Well, that made my day. That was the funniest thing I ever heard, because it's not piece of shit. It's point of sales.
Oh my God. I thought you were describing yourself as a POS.
You know, I am. I really am. But it's point of sales artist.
What does that mean? I'm totally embarrassed now. I'm humiliated.
No, please, I love that. Point of sales art I do for businesses, but most specifically my husband's business and wine. He sells wine. And so the 10 years or so we've been together, I've been curating all of the little cardstocks and point of sales is what they're called, references, to sell wine. So it'll be like little sketches, and then descriptions of what the wine, like what the flavors are, all that stuff. So that's my little specialty, piece of shit point of sales artist. But I do a lot
Courtney, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe I said that.
No, but honestly, I think that's why I label it that way too, is for the confusion.
Okay. So it was somewhat intentional.
Yeah, it's intentional. But I also pick up projects. I've got a lot of friends that will just be like, hey, I would like you to paint my dog. And I would be like, I'm on it.
So tell me where your artistic and creative influences came from. Has this been something that's been part of your life for a while?
Yeah, it's just kind of from the beginning, just always a creative kid. My stuff pretty much sucked back then, and it makes me laugh now. I feel like I'm kind of a caricature artist. Like, I don't think I'm skilled, but when I paint, and when I paint personally for people I love and I look at it, it makes me laugh. So it's all just for a laugh.
Laughs and entertainment.
Yeah.
So I talked to Devon Yanko earlier today, and she told me about how you do make a lot of art for your friends and that it's touching for a lot of the people who are close to you. She used the example of you either drawing or painting her in that throne, in that iconic photograph of her that Lululemon took, that where she just looks like a total gangster boss sitting on a throne, and that you put something together for her prior to her race at Further, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. And I understand that that's a habit of yours, that you do painting or drawing and send mementos to your friends who are about to tackle big objectives. Is that true? Tell me where that came from.
I don't know where it came from, but I began doing it and I love doing it. And as long as I have the time, I'm going to do it for everyone I love. This has been a really busy year, so I feel like I haven't been able to access that part of me as much as I'd like. But I did do those things for her, and it felt like the purest way to show her and show the people I love how excited I am for them for what they're about to do. And then they'll have like this weird little memento to take with them in case they make like a scrapbook about their big events, you know. It brings me so much joy. I mostly just do it for me.
Well, tell me a little bit about the process. You could use Devon as an example. I'm sure people would be interested to hear about this. Like, the idea obviously is so pure, pristine, admirable, to send something to a dear friend who's about to take on something huge, to just show them that they're loved. So with that being the foundation, then where do you go next? Like, how do you pick what you're going to paint or draw? And tell me about the delivery and all that stuff.
It is so free balling. Like, a lot of times I'll just, you know, that picture that you referenced of Devon was very iconic. She's very photographic, like beautiful. Loved that shot. So that inspired me just looking at it. And then I want to add my own flair. So I add like some weird little, I don't know, additions. And it just speaks to me. There's no like planning. It's just free flow. But I do like to make like old vintage, like 70s felt screen printed shirts for my friends too. I love wearing them. I just think it's hilarious just to have a name on your shirt and you just walk around with it. And I've done that for her and for some other loved ones at their races too. And it brings me great joy. But yeah, there's no process, sadly. It's not very creative or well thought out. It's just total free ball riffing.
Well, I can sense the dry humor maybe emerges there also.
Yeah. Yes.
Like I said, I discovered your blog today through a link that was included in your profile on the Bellingham Distance Project page. It has been updated for a little bit, and I barely scratched the surface, but I did some reading there. And honestly, I was very, very impressed. Obviously, art is one way to express yourself, but putting things down in writing, I think, is perhaps the most pure way of human expression. I'd love to, number one, hear your relationship with writing over time, and also challenge you to, now that you're a world record holder, start a Substack and start publishing in a more modern format rather than a Blogspot account. But you can defend that platform to whatever degree you want. But please tell me about your relationship with writing, how often you do it, and like if there's any value it brings to your life as a person or as an athlete.
I think that's very sweet that you found that. I feel like I tried to hide it or just put it out there so subtly that it would never be found, because for me, it was never to have an audience to read. It was more so just to have a vehicle to like sit down, submit to, and actually like follow through with, because it's like pulling teeth for me to get to write, but I love writing. I'm a creative writing major. So it's in me, and it's what I naturally gravitated towards when I was young. And there's nothing that makes me feel more expressive or like accessing that part of my soul that is it's most authentic than getting it down into this like long form. Like a lot of times I'm overwriting, I'm over describing, but just getting it out is just, it's very fulfilling for me. But sadly, in the last year, I feel like I've had so much going on, and a bit of my depression was rearing, and I just was very unmotivated to write. And so I'm very spotty, and in an ideal sense of self and having a good mindset about it and actually a good work ethic about it, I would be writing about every event I'm doing, every week of training, my experience at Further and stuff. I really have all of these notes. So one way around it is I take little books places, and I take endless weird notes, and I just hope that one day I'll sit down and actually put it all out onto that blog. And it's hilarious too, because I think Blogspot is dead.
So dead.
Am I going to get in trouble from Blogspot?
No, I think Google has even admitted that Blogspot is dead. Like, I think they've totally sent it out to pasture. They don't have anybody working on the product anymore. That's why I said you got to start a Substack, or publish with Free Trail. We'd be happy to publish your writing anytime you want. But I do think it's something that you should think about. As somebody who reads a lot, I was very impressed with the few things I was able to absorb on your blog today. And you do have a lot of important stories to tell. I mean, between Further, Comrades, and what happened last weekend, I mean, those are your first 3 posts right there. And I'm sure you would develop a rabid following, and I would lead that charge personally. But
that is so nice. A huge compliment coming from you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I do want to do that. I really do. But also it's that little part of me, that big part of me that doesn't like attention and need validation. It's hard to put the work out there. Because if you're putting the work out there, you feel like you've got something that people might be interested in reading, right? But that's not where I don't need that. So I got to figure out a way to, convince myself that I need to still do it just for me. I don't know. I gotta think my way through this, but I do want to write more, and I really appreciate your encouragement.
It's an interesting tension, to be a world record holder and to have the attention but not feel comfortable there. I'm sure there's a lot of people who feel that same way. Obviously, Vincent Bouillard from the UTMB fame, as somebody who didn't have social media, doesn't want the spotlight. And I think there's a very endearing reality there, or something that is, me as a sports fan, I'm drawn to those types of individuals, but also I'm desperate to hear and read more of what people like you have to say. So even if you just email me directly with your writings and newsletters, maybe that's the way to do it.
I would love to. You've inspired me to continue. So thank you for the gift of that.
Yeah. You just said something I'd love to pull on a little bit, if you don't mind. But you said that, some depression came up this year. And in looking at what you've accomplished this year, which we'll talk about next, oftentimes it's hard to get in the performance mindset and feel good with your running and training if you're feeling low and depressed. So as I look at what you've accomplished and hearing that characterization, it feels like, I'd like to hear more about that, like how you were able to do what you did, not feeling, super strong psychologically this year.
Mm-hmm. I hope that I can convey it in an eloquent way, because the hard part is that I'm still in it, and I really feel like I'm processing, and I just keep thinking about, gosh, when am I going to be done processing this? Like, can I actually have just a conclusion here, at least. Anyway, I'm still in it, so it makes it hard to talk about, but I think it is a very important thing to talk about. And I think that if I had heard more people describing stuff like this as I was growing up in my 20s, I would have felt a lot more faith in my future and that I wasn't alone. But one thing I've been processing is, how have I been able to achieve these results this year when it's been one of the hardest years of my life? In a way, I think I went into them under, just not expecting much of myself, because I wasn't sure if I was showing up low mentally, if I would even have the capacity to perform at like a high level. And so thus the pressure was low, because it's like, how am I going to show up? I was doing all of the physical work. I was doing everything I possibly could to show up and have a good day at all of these races, but I wasn't sure who would show up mentally. And so each time I was shocked when I still could perform, and I don't get it. Usually it doesn't work out like that. Usually I have to be pretty happy and just more things going right in my life, more balance, in order to show up and perform. So that's a conundrum I don't really understand. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you have any insight on that.
No.
Yeah.
No, but I appreciate you sharing, Courtney, honestly. Yeah. And I think there will be people who are surprised to hear that, right? After what you've done this year, which we'll talk about here in a second. Like, it's really incredible. And you're going to be going to India here next month as one of the favorites in the 100K World Championship. But I'm sure there's a lot of people who are fighting their own battles, myself included, not to say, that we're all dealing with similar stuff, to know that, you can still get out there and achieve amazing things, even when you doubt yourself or you feel unhealthy, mentally, psychologically, emotionally. I know I've dealt with one major depressive episode in my life in 2019, and I sucked at running. And, it was a physical manifestation of my internal state that made me feel that way while I was running and training. So it is a mystery. Yeah.
It is a mystery. It makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
That would work out that way.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about how you have showed up this year, Courtney. I want to start with something that you did for somebody else, that is Devon Yanko. You were part of Team Devon at the Lululemon Further event. Tell me about that experience. How did you come to be involved? What was your role in the team, and what was that experience like?
I would love to do a whole podcast on just that.
I did too on Further already, but here's round 3.
I think I listened to them too. Everything. Okay. So in November of last year, I was on the 50K world team, and it was in India, and I tore my calf in 2 places and hobbled in and ended up finishing and scoring for the team. And then everything changed, and I was miserable for months, and I was so unhappy. And the only thing I was looking forward to was Further. And I was finally getting my legs back under me, and I was training for Comrades, and we had this on the books, and it was so detailed, which I love, like Excel spreadsheets and all of the planning and everything. And Devon Yanko is incredible at that. And then this whole project it needed all of this planning at this level with their investment. And so to be a part of the weekly or monthly conversations about needs and things that we can say, things we can't say, best ways to help her. It just, God, the build up to it, that it itself, and then the whatever came after, all of the emotions, all of the news reports, everything about it was incredible. I feel so fortunate that I was able to be a part of that as just like a friend of somebody, like that Lululemon welcomed each of their athletes to have as full of teams as they did to help support them there. My role was just to aid. Corinne Malcolm's was like head honcho. She was the boss, and that was important for her to be that, because she is very good at that.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
And I would just be happy to be bitched around by Corinne.
Me too.
Yeah. And so we went into it with big goals. I mean, Devon can tell you or has shared with you what she was going after. And we were set on that and we were moving forward pretty well. And then something pretty severe happened and she was nursing a severe injury during. And so we had to like recalibrate and re-navigate around that. And so we were on our toes all the time. But because of that happening, we were able to rest a little bit more and it became a little bit more playful. The edge was off because the big goal was off the table, sadly. But then it became easier to aid and have fun. I mean, we were having drinks with little cocktails with little straws and stuff, little umbrellas. What am I trying to say?
Yep.
Little tropical drinks.
Yeah.
And just being witness to the science that was happening there was wonderful. It was so cool. Yeah. And witnessing what Camille was doing, what all of the women were doing, and then interacting with each pod that was connected to each athlete, basically. I fell in love with everyone's support teams. Like the people that were surrounding these athletes were incredible. And then then after this event, everyone would follow each other and keep in touch with each other and well wish one another. And I was like, damn, I just got a massive family. And I was just Devon Yanko support person. And suddenly I'm of equal, like, I don't know, value to be loved after that event. It was wild. I don't get it.
So cool. And you could feel it just through the internet too. Just what a heartwarming, life-changing thing it was for everybody. The athletes, maybe the least of which, but everybody else also surrounding the event was touched in an amazing way. I actually just pulled up the post that Devon put up about you. And if you don't mind, if it's not too embarrassing, I would love to read it here for our audience.
Go for it.
Before we get to talking about your world record. So Devon Yanko, who's of course been a stalwart professional in the sport for 15 years. She's been around as long as I have, posted a tribute to our guest here, Courtney Olsen, after her world record last weekend. And it's a fantastic photo. The cover photo is you wearing one of your t-shirts with just Devon Yanko's name on it, holding a Pliny the Elder beer, which for me being a Northern California person is perfect. And what Devon says is, I am nearly at a loss for words at how proud of Courtney Olsen I am. She just obliterated the 50-mile world record for women running 5:31:56. Earlier this year, she was on the podium at Comrades. She is a quiet force. She is an incredible friend. She shows up wholeheartedly for the people she cares about. She is fierce and creative, and I'm a better person for knowing her. She doesn't get a lot of attention for everything she does in our sport, but I will never stop screaming from the mountaintops about her. I am the president of the Courtney Olsen fan club. She is my queen. Proud of you, my precious friend. So friendships are strong in this sport, and it was amazing that you showed up for her at Further, and she was following you, I know, closely at Tunnel Hill and posted that beautiful tribute. Before we get to Tunnel Hill, obviously we got to talk about Comrades. Mm-hmm. I've never been there, but of course it is among the most iconic, certainly the largest ultramarathon, at least by participation. I believe this was your first time competing there. You landed on the podium, probably to that point, the biggest running result of your career. Tell me about that experience.
Oh gosh. That was one of the best. Like, it's hard to say which one is more valuable to me. I shouldn't even measure them, but that one was very important because it was a surprise, because I didn't expect much from myself, but mostly because of what it felt like to be among South Africans, and just I've never felt more inspired, I guess. And that is always, that and Tunnel Hill and JFK 50 and Javelina and many more have always been on my bucket list, but I've always put them to the side. They don't fit in perfectly. June is always so hard for me to choose a race because it feels like they're all right there. So I had put Comrades off for years, and then I only ever wanted to debut there when it would be a downhill. I consider myself a really strong downhill runner. Do you know Ski to Sea since you're here on the PNW?
No.
Ski to Sea has been like this over 100-year relay race in Bellingham from the top of Mount Baker to the bay. And it had like 8 different legs. Yeah, skiing, mountain bike and all that. And then there's a downhill run leg, and it's 3,000 feet of loss over 8 miles, just going down the pass. And I've always aced that. I love it. I've always felt incredibly most myself running really fast downhill. And so I was like, okay, Comrades downhill, that's going to be my jam. And so this past year where I did it, it was uphill, and I was like, I'm just going to go learn about it. I'm going to see what it feels like. I'm going to take away any lesson I can possibly get, and then I will apply it to the race that would go down where I actually think I can show up. So that's the mentality I had going into it, was just going to be a learning experience for me. So for it to have gone so well with that mindset, or because of that mindset, was shocking. What I can tell you any little piece of nuance, I'm still processing that race itself. But one that I've told recently that I think is interesting is that when I came into third really late in the race, and all of a sudden I had bike leads and the film crew and everything on me, I wasn't sure I wanted to step into that. I thought to myself, maybe I'm just going to hover back here and still like hang out around 4th or 5th. And I don't want that attention. I don't want that pressure. And so I had to battle with myself and consciously like choose to step into that place. And maybe that's a little egocentric too, like, because it feels like I had power to decide that. But I just knew I was feeling better than those positions, and I just wasn't sure I wanted the attention by stepping into third. And I don't really know. I think that's probably one of my fallacies. It makes me not a very strong competitor, probably, but I ended up stepping into it, and I inhabited the person who can podium, and I did the interviews after, and I was proud of myself for doing all that, but that was very like uncomfortable for me.
Inhabited the person who could podium. Tell me about how you moved through the field. This is one thing that Devon mentioned to me too, that you went from 9th to 6th to 3rd very late in the race. In your post-race analysis, do you feel like you executed it flawlessly, or what led to the late surge?
Yeah, I didn't have like a pacing plan or anything. I don't even think I looked at my watch much. I just went off feel, and I never knew where I was. I know that after. I know people said where I moved from and to, but I never knew where I was until I was third, because it's hilarious. The people on the side, they'd tell me I was one thing, and then 2 people later, they'd say I was a wildly different place. I went from like 13th to 4th in 3 seconds. I had no idea ever where I was. I liked the beginning because I could see the lead truck. And so then it gave me a little bit of like an awareness of how far from Herta and the top few would be. But that got lost after a few miles. And until then, I was just hunting anyone. I had zero idea. I was so out of it until the very last minute, which was just a few miles left of the race, maybe up to a 10K left. That's the only time I was present to where I was. So now in hindsight, I can see how I move forward a few places slowly, and it looks like I did really good pacing.
Yeah. And next year's a downhill year. So look out.
So do you want to do it?
No, not me. I mean, I would like to do it. I certainly would never be competitive, but that's not my ambition at this point in life. It is more about checking things off the bucket list. And I've heard it's a fantastic event. But Devon also said that she had done some analysis on your Strava, and basically you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, it was really in June that you started to really believe that the 50-mile world record might be within sight. My guess is that your performance in Comrades and embodying the person that can land on the podium, or whatever you just said, may have been that precipitating factor that, then returning home from South Africa, you had a clear goal at Tunnel Hill. Is that an accurate characterization?
Yeah, I think that's an accurate characterization. I think momentum is huge. I think riding that wave is very important, and that's what I'm doing, or trying to do. And, that post-race depression or blues or whatever, you experienced it. Yeah.
Yep.
That was pretty hard after Comrades, which sucks because it was such a high. So it's like, couldn't the high just last a little bit longer? But it was probably, and also because of the depression, like it was like the hardest summer of my life. And I was like aimless, and training was boring. It was so boring. And I had like all my friends, something was up, like they were injured or not going for anything in any similar way. So we weren't hitting the same stride. And, so I felt very lonely, and it's like, you hit this high, you're around all these incredible people, and then you're just training by yourself all summer for like, I don't know. It was like Tunnel Hill was too far in the future to excite me when it was only a few months away. But it wasn't tangible enough for some reason until just like maybe just this fall, I started to feel connected to the goal. So it was a lot of just mindless running all summer. But Tell
me a little bit more about your training. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. If you had.
No, I'm rambling.
Yeah.
Training.
Yeah, no, I was looking at your Strava again today, and it seemed like a baller build up from Comrades to Tunnel Hill. I'm not really a road runner myself, so, would love to hear just like a little bit of like what the emphasis of your training is, with this massive goal in mind, if there's anything that you were doing psychologically in terms of visualization or, X's and O's of training to help prepare you for this world record attempt.
Yeah. I'm coached by this guy in Bellingham named Jay Sloan. We've been together 4 years. So the entire time I've been with HOKA, I've been with Jay, and he's, I would say that the training philosophy is pretty simple. There's nothing crazy going on. I'm not doing anything wild, but I had to earn like back-to-back voluminous months or weeks. So like as long as I'm healthy, I think we've learned that I do well with consistent high mileage. And high mileage for me is 105 up. I never go more than 120. I don't feel like I've earned it, but I would like to be there. Like I'd like to get up there. But before, like I suffered from a lot of plantar fasciitis and some other issues and like the torn calf. And so I couldn't stack those weeks together. But this summer I was able to. I feel like since the tears in November of last year, I've had the healthiest year of training in my entire life. And it's been so fun. And I think that's one of the reasons why I had success at Tunnel Hill, is because it was just consistent work. Nothing flashy, a little bit of like maybe Jack Daniel's style marathon kind of like vibe, with like, let's say 3x3 miles in a long run, or a speed session during the week, which I find really valuable. And it connects me more to like what I considered my more innate qualities, being like a 1500 steepler in the past. And also as an aging runner, like I just need to keep that speed up. Yeah. And then one thing that we added in the last half year, since before Comrades was doing hill strides once a week, I never employed that before. And that's been a constant feature. And I think it's keeping my speed and my strength up.
Very cool. Okay. So let's spend the rest of our time talking about Tunnel Hill. I was looking at the course, and it seems like the back half is the slower half of the race. Obviously it is a fast course, but I wondered if that changed the way you approach things psychologically or strategically, that the second half is harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had heard about this famous 10 miles of slight incline, which I think is about maybe a range around 2% grade. Yep. I had it in my mind the entire time, about to prepare myself for it. And I tried to stay at a pace that I knew would be sustainable, even if super fatigued during that 10 miles. That makes sense. Like I was just always conscious to the fact that it was coming up. But also because I did Comrades uphill year, I also felt really empowered because nothing will be worse than that. That is the hilliest run I've ever done in my entire life. And I don't consider myself a very good hill runner at all. So I knew that this would probably feel kind of flat to me. And I have a trail right outside my house that has that perfect 2% grade on kind of similar, terrain. And so I've been training on that a lot. So I felt really confident. So it didn't affect too much. I just was always very mentally preparing for it.
Yeah. It seems like it comes at a really challenging point in the race.
Yeah.
This is the second year. This is the second year at Tunnel Hill that the 50-mile world record has gone down. Charlie Lawrence broke the men's world record last year. For our listeners, Tunnel Hill is in southern Illinois. What makes the course so fast? Is Tunnel Hill the place to chase world records?
I think so. I mean, they've had so many national records. The Canadian national 100-mile record just went down too for women.
Right. Yeah.
For me, it's because there's only 2 turns, 2 180-degree turns, because of its lollipop nature.
Yep.
So much of my racing is of great turning. Like all the championship races are really tiny little 2 mile to 5K loops with 180-degree cone turns. And it's always so disjunctive. So for me, I had a stretch that was like 26 miles straight. It's just like, you just get into a flow.
Yeah.
The ground is a little soft. So I feel like you can't really fully, maybe you can, but I felt like I couldn't really fully access the benefits of the super shoe, but I wore them nonetheless because I wanted fast recovery, and that good foam and everything. So I think that soft ground isn't as fast as it could be, but obviously it does its job.
You ought to host the world championship there someday.
The 50 mile US champs are there next year.
Okay. What about the 100K world champ? Can we make them put together a 100K course there at Tunnel Hill?
Seriously.
Yeah, come on.
I want it to come over here, but I hear it's because of its cost that it's why we won't claim it.
Interesting. All right. Well, tell me about the execution itself, because, obviously the preparation gets you ready, but at a certain point you got to actually go put yourself below Ann Trason's world record splits and hold it for 5.5 hours. Did you have like a specific time goal coming in? Was it just go under 5:40, which was Ann Trason's mark? Tell me any highs and lows that you experienced on the course.
Usually before races, like even before Comrades, I was taking notes and doing a ton of research and buying Fordyce's books. And I was writing myself a novel of history before I even went there. And I was so dialed in. And that's probably also why I saw success, is because I was like a student of it. But for this, I did the complete opposite. I was with the week in politics and everything, I was so out of it and hardly sleeping. And I was just like a zombie. And I didn't prep for this as much as I do, but I did prep. And so I say that to say the strongest detail I was operating under was, let's play with hitting 6:30 to 6:45 per mile pace. That's the big range I'll give myself. So if I'm having bad miles, I'm not too stressed, but I know I can go as fast as in the 6:30s if I'm feeling good. But anything faster than that, I thought would be kind of irresponsible or just risky to try to get so far under it. But yeah, I always had her time in mind. I gave myself that 15-second splay per mile. And then I also wanted to get under Camille's world best too, because I wanted it to be very clear, because I think it gets kind of confusing when you have the world best and world record.
Explain the difference there for the audience.
So Ann Trason's record was 5:40.18, and she set it in 1991 in Texas. And so that was verified. She was tested. The course was certed. But Camille has run 5:38 something I don't know the parameters that didn't make it measurable, but it's either the course wasn't record eligible or she wasn't tested or both. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact details, but that makes her time savvy enough for the world best. That's the fastest a woman has run that, but it's not able to be recognized in the record books. I don't know.
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. So I wanted to get under both of those times.
Yeah. So probably sometime after halfway, you probably are having the intuition that you're having a special one. You're probably doing some running math, and I'd love to hear like at what point it became clear that you were putting yourself in really good position to achieve this amazing world record performance. Was there a particular impactful or powerful moment where it felt like, okay, like I've got a shot here today?
I'd probably say that didn't come till like maybe mile 40 of 50. Mm-hmm. I really don't like to get too excited or think too much about things until I'm pretty sure something disastrous won't happen. I just feel like anything can happen at any time. And it almost did during it. So I just don't like to get excited too quickly. But just so you know, there were 2 men going for Charlie's record, and there were 2 women, myself included, and Andrea Pomeranski going for the women's one. So there was a lot of that excitement in the air, thinking and hoping one of the 4 of us would at least hit it. So I had company out there, and that was great, but it was also very stressful. And so when we started, Andrea is an incredible runner for Lulu, and she got second in the world at the 50K World Champs last year. And she has way better PBs than I. And I was just like, this woman's going to kick my ass. But it's going to be really fun to try to fight with her. And I think at the beginning, she said she would try to help me, or like, she thinks she was just being nice, but she said she would try to help me get that record. And I'm just like, I think you're going for it yourself, girlfriend. And so we ran the first 2 miles together, and then she took off, and she blitzed me, and she gained like a couple of minutes on me really quickly. And I was getting that feedback from my husband, who was my aide there. And I was like, goodness sakes, I hope she comes back. Otherwise, this race I'm clinching second. And so I had a lot of conversations with myself about being happy with second, and like just running within myself and for myself, and just like great to get a 50-mile time on the books, and then treat it maybe as like a really intense long run before the 100K next month. So she because she was
funny the stories we tell ourselves in the middle of these.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
So I was really stressed because I was fighting against her, but also excited for one of us to have our day, And so she was ahead of me probably through 31, 32, and it took me all that time to get her back. And it was the hill, the 10-mile hill section that I was able to overcome her. And then I held on to the lead for the final 10.
Good thing you're doing your hill strides, right, Courtney?
Yeah, I guess so.
Very cool. Well, Andrea finished third, running a little over 6 hours. It's very cool. You were able to both push each other in that way.
Yeah.
The only sort of media that emerged from Tunnel Hill, at least that I saw, were the photographs from the finish, and the cool photo that you posted on your own account of you breaking the tape. I'm sure people would love to hear what it felt like to knock that one out of the park. Was this the greatest sporting achievement of your life? The greatest day of running of your life?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was. I think that and Comrades are like, I don't even feel like they're real. I don't feel like it's me that earned them, and I don't feel like my life will change for them. Like, it just feels like it just happened. And today I worked at my banking job for 8.5 hours digitizing paper, and it just feels like I didn't even experience last weekend.
Did your colleagues even understand what you had just done? I mean,
yeah. So I used to work at a hospital here in town for like 10 years, and I was going to either I was going to lose my job if I took PTO to go run the Boston Marathon back in the day. And so I quit so I wouldn't get let go. And so this bank that I work at, they had heard the story and they were like, we will support you no matter what in all of your running endeavors. I think that that's salacious that happened to you. And so you come work for us, we'll teach you how to bank and we'll support you as a runner. And so that's how I ended up here. So they knew from the start that I was a runner.
Unbelievable. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Do you want to give them a public shout out here on the podcast, or would you like to not reveal where you work?
I can reveal it. It's People's Bank. It is a very, very nice, small, community-minded, supportive of runners bank.
That is my favorite part of this whole episode. I'm going to go open an account with the People's Bank in Bellingham, Washington, just because of their support of you.
Yes.
All right, I have to ask you a couple of very annoying questions. Number one, are you going to go back and do the 100-miler now at Tunnel Hill?
You know what's weird? I just was thinking about it today.
Let's go.
Because I was running.
Let's go.
So for the first 18 miles of the run, I was with the 100-mile men's leads, and I had a blast. They were so kind and funny, and like I felt built up as opposed to like energies taken. And I was like, they're having fun, and I like this course, and I love the race director. I'm obsessed with him, and I feel like this would be a fun place to debut for my skill set, especially. Like I feel like a little bit more that kind of runner over, like doing something in the trail 100 world.
All right.
So, yeah,
well, that was my next very annoying question. Obviously, like I'm a trail person. This is a very trail oriented podcast that we occasionally go into the stuff that you specialize in so successfully. But have you ever been tempted to jump into a more trail oriented event?
Just wee temptations.
Yes.
I was signed up for checking it last year, and I was really looking forward to it, but my mental health I couldn't do it. I had to pull out. I just knew I wasn't mentally tough enough to handle the way that course is. Have you done checking it? It's one of the OG American classics that I've never gotten around to doing. Maybe next year's my year. Okay, maybe together.
Let's do it. Okay.
Because I
gotta open up my bank account at the People's Bank. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, okay.
No, but I would consider doing that as like my first one, just because it's in my backyard, and I love Chrissy, and it's a whole other beast, and I really like what I'm into. I like the road ultras, even though it's the least romantic, in my opinion, of all the running.
Well, it feels like you're just now scratching the surface of your potential here. So I don't want to tempt you away from chasing a lot of big goals on the horizon for you, but obviously we would love to see you take those talents off-road at some point in your future too. But before you do that, obviously you got a world championship to attend to, so we can start winding down now. We've mentioned it a couple of times. The 100K world championship this year is going to be held in India. I think it was a place where you've raced in the past. I think the 50K world champs was there last year and the year before. You're going to be going in as one of the favorites, I'm assuming, this year. What does recovery look like? And, what sort of training might you be able to squeeze in before the world championships to close the year?
Oh gosh, this is the exciting, weird part. And also I hope I'm not a favorite, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Like, this is a huge risk, and it's selfish to me. It's a very selfish choice. I feel like I'm taking the spot of a person with fresh legs, and I fully recognize that, but I want to try it because I've never done back-to-back ultra like that. I feel like in my specialty, you can't race as much as others can. Like, I love the Courtney DeWalter. I want to be able to race that much, but I personally can't. I know not many can do it at that level, but I can only really squeeze in 2 of these a year. And now I'm about to attempt my 3rd, and the two last ones are within a month apart. Like, that's really aggressive. So my goal is just to be a really good contributing member to the team. And I would be wonderful to help the team score, which would be top 3. I would love a repeat gold team. So it's all team for me here. But I don't know if it's going to be possible, but my body is telling me it's possible currently because I'm feeling really good. I've run today. It felt pretty dang good, but I know it could like rear its ugly head in like 2 weeks. Like, that delayed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
the team.
Mm-hmm.
I love that orientation. And yeah, with these new super shoes and the fact that Tunnel Hill is mostly soft surface, as I understand it, maybe that'll help you absorb that world record performance and knock another one out of the park here to close the year. But, team first.
Yes. And my coach, he gives me week to week based on how I feel. So I have no idea what he's planning. So he's got his work cut out for me. And I've done some crowd sourcing, and people just say, drink a lot of water, eat really good food, maybe do some biking. So I'm getting a lot of really helpful information. So that's a little bit about...
Maybe do a painting, maybe send a Substack newsletter about your world record, those types of things.
Yeah, that'd be great. But I can't stop trying to make these teams and saying yes to them, even though it's like the least supported thing that USATF doesn't like to aid too much. I mean, we pay for this mostly out of pocket. We do get a little help from them, but this is because I love it. And it's because I've fallen in love with like every team I've been on. Like, these are some of my favorite people, Devon included. That was like the first time I met her. And I'm several returning members are coming this time to India next month. And so I can't stop saying yes.
So good. Courtney, you're awesome. You're so cool. I'm so glad that you come on the podcast, and I really enjoyed our conversation. I end all of these episodes with the same question for everybody. That is just, who is one person that you admire? Can be inside or outside of sports, living or dead. Why do you admire that person?
That's tough because there's a lot. And I feel like we each talked a lot about Devon today, so I'm not going to say her even though I want to. One person that comes to mind that I'm really grateful for. Okay, it's going to be a hybrid. Is that cheating?
No.
Okay.
Open to interpretation here.
Okay. Corinne Malcolm and Chris Brown. I love these two. And I feel like they helped get me started in the professionalization of like my running, and they helped me get in with HOKA, and I'm really grateful for that. And by putting themselves out or just like mentioning my name or whatever they did, they helped set a series of events that led to me believing in myself more and getting more support. And I think that's incredible when people do that for each other. And I will always be grateful for them for that.
What a perfect answer to the closing question. Courtney, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Congratulations on the world record. Good luck at the World Championships.
Thank you so much, Dylan.